All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, if you have ever found yourself practically falling asleep in a history class, just listening to a monotonous voice drone on and on about dates and dead kings, well, this one is absolutely for you. Today, we're exploring how we can completely transform the way we teach and learn social studies. For way too long, we've just accepted this standard where students sit through boring, one-way lectures, literally counting down the minutes until the bell rings. But today, we're looking at concrete data and cutting-edge research that points toward a vastly different approach: dynamic, active learning. I am so thrilled to guide you through this, because what we're going to unpack today fundamentally reshapes how human beings acquire, process, and actually retain knowledge.
To get the full picture of this massive educational shift, we'll quickly cover 5 key areas. First, the student engagement crisis. Second, constructing new knowledge. Third, what teachers actually think. Fourth, the 5E learning model. And finally, building the future. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The Student Engagement Crisis.
Let's start with a problem that every educator and, frankly, every parent is all too familiar with right now. Think back to your own middle school history or geography class. Were you treated as an active thinker with your own unique ideas? Or were you treated as just an empty vessel waiting to be filled with dates and facts? You know, the whole memorize the year the Magna Carta was signed or else vibe. The popular perception of social science has almost always been that it merely transmits fixed information, usually centering around some thick, dusty textbook that you just have to memorize for an exam. It completely creates this low self-esteem around the subject. Students feel entirely disconnected from the actual, vibrant realities they live in every single day. Instead of learning how society works, they're really just learning how to pass a test.
And you know, this wasn't just a minor issue. It recently became a full-blown crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic and that sudden shift to distance learning, it didn't just cause technical glitches with microphones and cameras. It severely aggravated this passive learning problem. Based on research published in the Al-Islah Journal of Education, teachers faced immense struggles managing distance learning. The data showed this really intense, cascading effect. A massive drop in student engagement led to weak motivation, which then resulted in severe delays in assignment submissions and a glaring lack of student interaction. Just staring at black squares on a screen literally proved that the old, passive methods were completely failing under the stress test of remote learning.
To understand why it failed so spectacularly, we have to look at the foundation. Traditional schooling has heavily relied on theories like behaviorism and cognitivism. That's essentially treating the human brain like a simple stimulus-response machine, or maybe a basic computer hard drive. These models treat knowledge as absolute, given, effectively turning students into reproducing robots whose only job is to download data and spit back facts. Constructivism, on the other hand, demands that knowledge is constructed internally. It fiercely challenges the idea that learning is just something that happens to a student from the outside. Instead, it places the student at the very center of building their own customized understanding of the world.
Section 2. Constructing new knowledge.
This brings us to our core solution, and really the theoretical hero of this explainer: constructivism, rooted in the pioneering ideas of cognitive psychologists like Lev Vygotsky. This approach treats students as the active architects of their own knowledge. The research strongly emphasizes that learning absolutely must be based on a student's prior experiences. Think about it. A child doesn't walk into a classroom with a blank slate, right? They have a rich, complex background of societal observations, family dynamics, and cultural experiences. Constructivism taps directly into that. It transforms learning from this passive reception of data into an active, creative construction of concepts. This is a real game changer, because it acknowledges that learning isn't some one-size-fits-all download. It's a highly personal building process.
So the crucial point here is that the teacher's identity completely shifts. The teacher transitions from being a dictator of absolute facts to what Vygotsky beautifully called a more knowledgeable other. The teacher provides scaffolding. Think of it literally like the scaffolding used when constructing a building, or, the training wheels on a bicycle. It's the temporary, necessary structural support provided by the teacher to help students build their ideas and reach a higher level of understanding that they just couldn't quite reach on their own. Once the student gets it, the scaffolding is removed. The teacher becomes a dynamic facilitator, not a pre-programmed loudspeaker.
Section 3. What do teachers think? Now, theory is great on paper, but what happens when the rubber meets the road? Like, what happens when we ask actual secondary-level social science teachers how this works in practice? Let's look at this critical survey conducted in the Telangana region of India. It explored the attitudes of 100 secondary-level teachers towards this exact constructivist approach. The researchers wanted to deeply understand if teachers were actually using this in their daily routines and how it truly impacted their classroom management and day-to-day teaching activities. And the survey data revealed a really fascinating divide. While both groups overwhelmingly value the approach, junior teachers actually show a significantly higher capability in managing active, constructivist classrooms and creating engaging activities. The data actually showed a statistically significant difference here. Senior teachers still played a vital role, acting mostly as seasoned mentors and motivators, but the junior teachers, who are perhaps a bit closer to their own modern university training, well, they were the ones highly adapting to these new active learning environments on the ground.
However, there is a catch, a pretty big hurdle actually. Despite embracing active learning and bringing all this great, vibrant, constructivist energy into the classroom, both male and female teachers still, ironically, default to traditional end-of-term summative testing. You know, the big, scary final exam. They do that rather than continuously assessing the actual construction process of the student's knowledge. So they're teaching in a highly innovative way, but testing in an incredibly old-fashioned way. It's a clear, glaring gap that absolutely needs bridging if this method is going to fully succeed.
Section 4. The 5E learning model. So how do we practically bridge this gap? How do educators execute constructivism from start to finish without turning the classroom into absolute chaos and ensure they are evaluating students correctly? Well, we can use the highly effective 5E learning model. Championed by innovative educators like Professor N.K. Dash, this framework provides a simple, logical, 5-step architectural blueprint for lesson planning that perfectly aligns with constructivist theories. It breaks down into engage, explore, explain, extend, and evaluate. Let's walk through exactly how this looks in a real classroom.
Phase 1. Engage. Here, you don't start by lecturing or handing out a dry, boring syllabus. No way. You start by provoking curiosity. You arouse interest by asking compelling, real-world, open-ended questions to discover what the students already know. For example, if the topic is the environment, you might ask them what they specifically notice about pollution in their own neighborhoods on their walk to school, before you ever even open a textbook. You make it instantly relevant to their lives.
Next up, let's move to Phase 2 and see how this builds. In the Explore phase, students get hands-on experience. A teacher might send students out into the school campus in small groups to simply observe nature versus man-made objects. They record their findings, debate, and discuss with their peers, and formulate their own hypotheses without direct teacher interference. The teacher just steps back and lets the students act as investigators, discovering the world on their own terms.
Then, in Phase 3, the Explain phase, the students return to the classroom and enthusiastically explain what they found. This is where the magic really happens. As students share their raw, unfiltered observations, the teacher seamlessly introduces the formal academic vocabulary. The teacher helps them classify their findings into natural versus human-made environments. This is that scaffolding we talked about earlier in action. The students are essentially defining the academic concepts collaboratively based on what they just saw with their own eyes. They own the knowledge because they found it themselves.
Finally, in Phases 4 and 5, students extend this newly acquired knowledge to solve future problems, like creatively applying their fresh understanding of the environment to brainstorm actionable solutions for local pollution in their city. Simultaneously, the teacher evaluates them, but not with a multiple-choice test. This evaluation is continuous, far, far away from that traditional end-of-term exam trap we mentioned earlier. It asks open-ended questions about how the student's thinking is actively changed from Phase 1 to Phase 4, dynamically measuring their true conceptual growth.
Section 5. Building the Future.
By embracing this 5E model and the broader theory of constructivism, we actively move social studies away from utilitarian memorization. We shifted towards egalitarian critical thinking, preparing students to actually participate in a complex, rapidly changing society. If we distill everything we've looked at today, it really comes down to one fundamental truth. Children are not blank slates. They walk into the physical classroom or log into a virtual learning environment already equipped with their own vibrant views, pressing questions, and deep concepts of the world. Recognizing, honoring, and building upon that is the very first step to real, transformative education.
So as you step away from this explainer today, whether you're a dedicated teacher, an ambitious student, or simply a lifelong learner, I want to leave you with this question. What rigid traditional methods in your own life do you need to finally tear down? And how will you start actively constructing your own future knowledge? Thanks for exploring with me today, and I'll see you next time.